Where's the time? Where's the timekeeper?
No. Go ahead.
Where's the watch?
Speak to the microphone, sir.
No, I want to check the watch.
No. Just speak to the microphone. This is not your maiden speech.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thanks, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of South Africa, I salute all of you. The President spoke about change, renewal, and hope. This presupposes a commitment to conditions of peace and clarity without which human prosperity cannot be realized. ANC understood such a path would not be possible without trust among South Africans, a trust which is an outcome of earning. When there's a trust, it's because that relationship is grounded voluntarily to be strong. ANC realized that, Mr. President, that trust bond was necessary, which found expression in our Constitution in general. Constitution succeeds to be a bond only when it is consistently adhered to. I'm saying this because human beings in general, there is always struggle to trust one another, and they find it difficult to live amongst one another. And the law comes as an intervention to ensure that human beings are forced mechanically by law to live together and learn about one another over time. Constitution Trust Bond is a platform for growing our bond, which has been bastardized by racism, tribalism, and other forms of ethnicity or ethnic division, at times including religion, that bond which is humanity. But the modern era of human relationship roots the growth of human bond in laws. That's why it is important to respect the law. Our forebears understood logically and scientifically why law should be adhered to for sustainable nationhood. Therefore, Constitution is our primary route of trust towards the ultimate one of humanity. This challenge is very, very important because when we speak about racism, we're not speaking about a race. We're speaking about a system, irrespective of from which direction it is coming. Now, the ANC has envisaged a role of SOEs within the framework of a developmental state. And in terms of this framework, according to the ANC, SOEs and DFIs are not created to maximize profit or incur losses. Rather, they exist to drive the transformation and development. Their dual mandate is to achieve balance between the required level of self-funding and undertaking developmental projects that the private sector would ordinarily not invest in. Indeed, some of our big public companies are located strategically in sectors of significance in our economy. Amongst others is Eskom in energy, telecom in communication, Transnet in transport. This gives these public companies opportunities, when properly run, to ensure that in the area of communication, communication is adequate. In the area of transport, goods and services are optimally moved. And in the area of communication, communication is smooth. It is correct to say that apartheid used SOCs for jobs, for services, for procurement. At all material times, Mr. President, when we talk about SOEs, whatever we criticize amongst them, the biggest question is the clarity of our strategic objectives. Because conventionally, they have survived the liberalization in the globe because of their relevance in contributing in creating more jobs, enhancing services, ensuring that we procure strategically. It's an undisputable evidence that between Eskom and Transnet, almost 100 people are employed in relatively secure and well-paying jobs. And according to State South Africa, this is almost 10% of workers in the formal non-agricultural sector. International experience has taught us that even in the most liberalized economies, state-owned enterprise continue to thrive and support the development of other sectors of economy. Historically, in the developed countries in North America, Europe and the East, SOEs and public investment have led innovations, research and development that have facilitated the establishment of most well-known brands. Let me give some examples. Apple is a perfect example that supports my argument. Every technology that gives the iPhone its smartphone capabilities owes its vision on funding to the state. These include the internet, GPS, touchscreens, displays, and even voice-activated smartphone assistant. The US Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency bankrolled development of the internet, while the CIA and the military funded GPS. It's a little-known fact that 9th biggest auto manufacturer by volume globally, Renault, is an SOE owned by the French government. The company was expropriated without compensation by government. By the way, if Member Lekota reads our constitution, he will discover that expropriation without compensation is allowed on particular conditions. The 10th largest bank in the world, with total asset worth over 2 trillion in US dollars, is the Post Bank of Japan, a country considered to be a bastion of liberalization. In spite of the challenges it is facing currently, Eskom remains in the top 10 of largest electricity public utilities in the world, and in terms of generation capacity and sales. The decay in our large SOEs, such as PRASA, is also alarming. A typical example of this is the decision taken by Metro Rail Western Cape in December last year to suspend all trains running on the Central Line in Cape Town, which services the areas where millions of working class poor people live, such as Khayelitsha, Philippi, Mitchell Plain, Bishop Lavis, and Langa. This has obviously had a devastating impact on our people and economy. In our search for solutions, we need to ask difficult questions. How did you arrive at the state of our SOEs which is pertaining now? How did our biggest SOEs land in the situation they are in today? We are confident that the judicial inquiry into corporate capture will answer some of these questions. I would argue that there has been lapse, Mr. President, in governance and oversight on these companies over many years. And governance is also, in terms of the law, another trust bond in the commercial sector. The quality of governance in the state of SOEs constitute perhaps the single most important factor that informs the decision-making investors, both foreign and domestic, when they judge a country as possible destination for investment. Our former president, Mr. Cde Mondli, captured this challenge our government must deal with if we want to attract larger volume of investment. I quote, "The world investor community has understandably asked that, as Africans, we must establish the conditions to enable them to take rational business decisions to make long-term investment in Africa. This implies, in a nutshell, that in the eyes of investors, the credibility of our country depends on the sense that they get of clarity, stability, and predictability of our legal system, democratic government principles, policies, and processes, and the governance system of our large SOEs. This is particularly relevant to South Africa. I beg your pardon. This is particularly relevant to South Africa as a developing economy, considering that for the past few decades, global growth has been driven by robust levels of demand from emerging economies. This is evidenced by the portfolio and flow of foreign direct investment. The Honorable President, in his address to this joint sitting of Parliament, said that government will intervene decisively to stabilize and revitalize our state-owned enterprises. The performance of some of these SOEs has placed tremendous pressure on the fiscus. Indeed, we are encouraged by some of the changes we have witnessed at Eskom, and Parliament must take some credit for action we have taken through more enhanced oversight state-owned entities, including Eskom. Eskom's interim financial statement, released last month by the new board and management, make for some depressing reading. The deep crisis includes the drop in sales, overdue debt owed to the utility by municipalities running into billions of rand, as well as Eskom's staggering government guaranteed debt of 367 billion, a 34 billion increase from a year ago. This situation is clearly unsustainable. SOEs must be strategically positioned to generate the revenue sufficient to cover the costs associated with executing their mandates. They cannot be allowed to become a permanent drain on the fiscus. Honorable Speaker, Chairperson, I would like to make some concrete proposals to contribute to the ongoing debate on the call by the President that we need to stabilize and revitalize our SOEs. One first proposal is the audit of all SOEs that government needs to undertake. Government needs to undertake a thorough, systematic audit of all the SOEs we have in all spheres of government. This should be done in order to establish their purpose and rationale of their existence, and whether there's a case to sustain all of them based on evidence. With a strategic intent in mind of contributing in job creation and ensuring that services are improved and procuring strategically. Government, as the owner and shareholder in SOEs, must establish a structured and obligatory process through which it periodically reviews the relevance and significance of SOEs. The next proposal, Honorable President, is on the SOEs, is on the oversight of the SOEs by the government that hosts entities. In order to achieve good governance, SOEs must exist within known and clear legal framework. This means that the board's managers must first and foremost discharge their legal duties without succumbing to undue influence. Government must establish appropriate structures and processes with effective checks and balances which enable the directors and management to discharge their legal responsibilities. The President has already spelled out that the directors must stay out of operational duties of managers, such as supply chain management. The third proposal, establishing monitoring and evaluation framework, M&E. Success of an M&E framework depends on the clarification of roles of the shareholders, board management, the board, and etc. The powers and responsibilities of these important role players must be clarified. The lack of effective M&E system is what has opened the door to corporate capture and massive corruption. For example, the 1.6 billion transferred from ESCOM to Mackenzie and trillion without proper contracts and metro late services and so on. All what we are calling for, Honorable President, is that if we want a trust between us and investors, trust between us and the citizenry, the law that governs, that ensures that governance imperatives are adhered to, those must be in place. Our oversight must be effective. Some of the departments have oversight units that do not work at all. Some have got oversight units that function very minimally. Because unless departments that host entities adhere to these governance imperatives, trust by broader society and investors is not going to work. Because to actually appeal to investors, it's critical that issues like tax policies, fiscal policies, and corporate governance are actually in place and understood. Because it is only that trust that will unleash the energies of the investors into our economy. Having said all that, siyabulela Mongameli.